Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tracing Russia's path, really from the Soviet collapse right up to now, to that centralized state and the global confrontation we see.
And the big question, the one we really need to unpack for you, is why? Why did the Russian public turn away from liberal democracy so decisively?
Yeah, what created that demand for the strong leader they have today?
Well, it really boils down to economic trauma. I mean, the 90s transition, it was catastrophic.
Shock therapy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Shock therapy, hyperinflation. You had this perfect storm. GDP contracted by almost 50% between 91 and 97.
50%, wow.
Yeah, nearly half the economy just gone. And get this, the average real income for almost everyone, like 99% of people, was still lower in 2015 than it was back in 1991, before the collapse.
That's staggering. So that kind of failure, it just breaks something, doesn't it?
It fundamentally broke the social contract. It created this deep societal yearning for stability, for a strong hand, for a powerful state.
And the foundations for that strong state were laid almost immediately. You have to look at the 1993 constitutional crisis.
Oh, absolutely. A foundational failure. President Yeltsin facing a hostile parliament.
He didn't just negotiate?
No. He sent in the military, tanks firing on the legislative building, the Russian White House. He used state coercion to settle a political fight.
And that established the principle right there.
It did. Executive power trumps everything else.
Yeah.
Might makes right, essentially. The new Constitution, written right after that, baked in this super-presidentialism.
So the checks and balances we'd expect.
Effectively gone from the start. The system was designed for concentrated power, written under duress, really.
And did that chaos, that concentration of power, open the door for corruption, too?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
While Yeltsin was consolidating power, the oligarchs were being born. The whole loans for shares scheme in the mid-90s.
Right, where state assets were snapped up for pennies on the dollar.
Exactly. It was this massive transfer of public wealth. But here's the critical part, the trap. Those deals were so murky, so, frankly, corrupt.
They weren't exactly legal.
Legally dubious, let's say, which meant the state always had leverage over these new oligarchs. They were vulnerable to prosecution from day one.
Leverage Putin would later use.
Ruthlessly.
Oh.
Which brings us to that authoritarian pivot. Putin's rise wasn't just a change of faces. It was a systemic shift. Power moved to the Siloviki.
The security and intelligence guys.
Yeah, the FSB. Military intelligence, pragmatic types, not really ideological, focused laser-like on law, order, and state control.
And the defining moment for them. Was it the Yukos affair?
2003, the Yukos affair.
Yeah.
Absolutely pivotal. Mikhail Khodorkovsky, the richest man in Russia, funding opposition parties.
Arrest. Ostensibly for tax evasion, but...
But everyone knew it wasn't just about taxes. It was a political message. A very clear, calculated move to reassert absolute state control over strategic assets, over any independent power base.
They didn't just arrest him, they dismantled his company, Yukos.
Seized it, effectively renationalized it. That move, it transformed the sort of chaotic crony capitalism of the Yeltsin era into something new. Analysts call it coercive state capitalism.
Mere coercive state capitalism, meaning...
Meaning your economic power exists only at the pleasure of the Kremlin. Political loyalty isn't just preferred, it's mandatory for survival.
And the other oligarchs got the message.
Immediately. You saw figures like Roman Abramovich quickly hand over control of key assets. Oleg Deripaska even publicly said his business interests weren't separate from the state's. Game over for independent oligarchs. Internal control secured.
Okay, so internal control locked down. Where does Russia project this renewed strength outwardly?
The near abroad. That's always been the red line. Regional dominance in the old Soviet space is seen as, well, non-negotiable for being a great power.
And the 2008 Georgia War fits that perfectly.
Textbook example. Russia intervened militarily because Georgia was moving towards NATO. The strategic goal was clear. Prevent NATO expansion into their perceived sphere of influence at any cost. That buffer zone is paramount.
Right. Okay, let's jump to today. We hear a lot about Russia's economy being surprisingly resilient despite sanctions after 2022. What's actually driving that?
It's almost entirely state mobilization. It's a war economy, plain and simple. Defense spending is huge, maybe 7.5% of GDP now.
So the government is just pumping massive amounts of money in.
Exactly. But here's the paradox, that massive spending is overheating the economy. It's creating so much demand that inflation is soaring.
Which is why the central bank had to hike rates so high, like 21%.
Precisely. They hit 21% in October 2024, trying desperately to cool things down. It's stability, yes, but it's artificial, driven purely by war spending.
And the sanctions themselves, intended to isolate Russia.
Yeah.
Have they backfired geopolitically?
In a way, yes. By limiting Russia's access to Western finance, the sanctions seem to have inadvertently pushed Moscow into a leadership role, accelerating the formation of an alternative economic bloc.
You mean like BRICS?
Exactly. The expansion of BRICS, the focus on de-dollarization initiatives like BRICS Pay, it's all about creating parallel systems outside Western control. Russia's playing a key part in that realignment.
So, short-term resilience may be driven by war, but what about the long-term picture? Are there deeper structural issues?
Oh, profound ones. The biggest is demographics. Russia had a population problem before the war, and now it's much worse.
War casualties, obviously, but also.
Also, brain drain. Hundreds of thousands of young, educated professionals have left since 2022. That's a huge loss of future potential. The state is burning its future human capital for today's military needs.
So the entire system, the economy, it's optimized purely for short-term war fighting, isn't it? Sacrificing long-term growth, consumer well-being, everything else.
That's the reality. It raises a really crucial question, the one you should be thinking about. What happens to that whole economic structure when eventually the massive military spending has to slow down? What's left?